Hey guys, this is Courtney from Willow's Bloom, and today I'm doing the forecast for the Scorpio New Moon happening on November 13th at 20 degrees of Scorpio. This is a big one, especially because it is coming off of eclipse season and it still carries some pretty volatile energy with it that does have a very strong potential to be helpful for us, especially with all the things that were presented during this eclipse season. It can help kind of break out of some things that may have presented themselves as issues during these last few weeks, or it could be challenging. So it's kind of one of those things where it can go either way, and it's not necessarily written in the stars in terms of how this energy will pan out. And that's because this eclipse involves a T-square where it's opposite this new moon is a T-square that involves Uranus, and Uranus tends to bring chaos and like unexpected results, surprises. And so we don't really know how that will land for each individual person. So let me go ahead and start off by breaking this down. So this is a new moon. So the sun and moon are together in the sky in the sign of Scorpio. They are also next to Mars. And this is already kind of an intense energy. So in general, new moons signify a start of something, and they are a time of darkness when the sky is obviously black. And so during this period of time, we can become much more introspective and we can have greater self-awareness as we plant a seed for how we want to move forward differently in our lives, or things that we want to change, or things that we want to grow. And that usually involves new effort or, again, changes in some respect. So that's kind of what a new moon in general is about. And then we have it during Scorpio season, and we are seeing changes that involve usually some kind of emotional pattern, and that has to deal with understanding the deeper sides of ourselves and what has kind of led to this point in time. And one of the things that I feel like would have become clear leading up to this new moon is the problem. And that's because this eclipse season really draws out a lot of these old patterns and issues, and it shows us where we need to redirect our focus. And Mars, which is in Scorpio next to this new moon, is an extremely focused planet in the sign of Scorpio. It tends to be driven by a kind of one-track mind, and I feel like we are going to benefit from that energy. Mars also has to deal with ending things, conflict, or cutting things away in some degree. And it's a very courageous planet, and it helps us make those necessary endings or changes in our behavior so that we can become clear and focused about what it is that we really, really want. So in order to move forward on making changes about certain problems that we were presented during eclipse season, we have to first recognize the psychological underpinnings of those problems. And with Mars here, bring those to a close with our own action and our willpower. I'm going to make a different choice. I'm going to be focused on my goal and on my integrity and align my actions and my words and intentions. So that's kind of the very positive energy that this new moon can bring. And I think for many of us, there is something in our lives that we have kind of started to reevaluate, especially with this Four of Cups in reverse. There's something in our lives where we're recognizing that, again, the way that we have been doing it feels wrong, or our goals feel wrong, or that relationship feels wrong, or the style in which we pursue things feels wrong. And so when the Four of Cups are reversed, I feel like also with the Nine of Cups in reverse, I feel like we're realizing how doing things in that same way is going to get us to, like, we thought it was going to get us to reach this goal, or we thought it was what we wanted. And then we're realizing now that that's actually not going to fulfill us emotionally. So we're having this clarity and this breakthrough of energy where we're realizing, actually, I need something else. I need to do something differently. And again, in order to understand what to do differently, we first have to understand why we were doing things or pursuing that goal or whatever it is in that way in the first place. So we first have to kind of unearth things, and that's a Scorpio quality. Scorpio rules everything beneath the earth's surface. So we're quite literally going into the garden and digging through the soil and looking at what is underneath here? Why are all these plants spoiled? Why are they not growing? What's wrong with the nutrients in this soil that is leading this to happen? And so I think that we are needing to sustain something long term. We're wanting something to be fruitful for us, to have longevity, to be nourishing to us. Again, balancing in our lives, which is what all those eclipses were about this last month. And because of that, we're recognizing that there is some things in our lives or in the soil of our lives that we're not ever going to make that happen. We're not ever going to create that nourishing plant, for example. And so I think we're having clarity, and I think part of the clarity comes from curiosity. During the time of this new moon, we have Mercury in Sagittarius making an exact sextile to Venus in Libra. And I really feel like this is one of the gifts of this eclipse, is that we are being able to communicate a lot clearer with others and learn from others and actually adapt and be agile right now in order to make the necessary changes or have the necessary realization. So we're digging underneath the soil and we're saying, what's not working here? Let me be curious about what I can do. And that is important where, Scorpio is typically a fixed sign. It's quite rigid and lacks adaptability. But I think with this strong Mercury, Mercury's not strong in Sagittarius, but with the support of Venus aspecting Mercury, I think that's actually going to give us the ability, specifically through counsel and relationships with others, where we're going to be able to be more agile, more adaptable, more open-minded, so that we can question the way that we've done things and not assume that we know, because that's where the problem remains stuck. When we assume we know how things are, how things should be, and we don't take outside perspectives into consideration around this issue in our lives. So I really feel like that's one of the best benefits of this period of time. And then once we know where we're going, what changes need to be made, once we take that input, we have that strength of focus and courage and determination from this being a Scorpio new moon and Mars in Scorpio especially, that has that unified focus, this obsessive quality almost, where we're like, I'm going to get this. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to push forward until I achieve this outcome, because I'm not willing to fall back into this pattern. I'm not willing to lose the ground that I've gained through these difficult experiences and maybe losses and challenges, or even maybe fun experiences. But regardless, we've gained some ground and we don't want to slip back. We don't want to go back to an old chapter. So we are ready and willing to put in the work, but more so to do so from a place of inner alignment and determination. So it's not so much that we're like, oh, I got to work super hard. It's more so that we have the courage of conviction and passion, which is what fuels Mars and Scorpio. These individuals are so unified and focused and obsessive because every single part of them is online and agreeing and in focus and integrity towards this outcome. So every emotional aspect of themselves wants this, believes in this, and it's not undercutting itself through, self-doubt or, falling back into old things. It's like, no, it's 100% there online going for this. So that is kind of how I see this evolution happening. And I didn't even get into the most important details of this new moon fully yet, which is that this is a T-square. So this new moon is opposite Uranus and squaring Black Moon Lilith. Both Uranus and the new moon in Mars are squaring Black Moon Lilith. So what does this mean? So when I said that this new moon was volatile, I was really talking about this opposition with Uranus. Why I love this is because we need something volatile. We need something to be a catalyst, a change agent, to get out of our patterning, to get out of stuck energy, to get out of things that are, again, trapped and fixed in nature, which is a Scorpio quality. So we really need Uranus here to come stimulate the change. That could mean that surprising events and things happen that have you look at the situation differently, or that have you challenge yourself to actually be willing to make a specific change because of the way that this energy comes into your life and acts as a catalyst of some sort. So let me try to think of an example. So let's say you really want to eat well and you've noticed that over the eclipse season, you had some injuries or some illnesses come up, and actually not eat well. Let's say you've been really, really busy, really active, and during eclipse season, you got injured. Well, this might be an indication of needing to slow down. But then you have to actually dig underneath the soil and ask yourself, okay, I need to slow down, but why? What is driving me towards busyness? What is driving me towards fast-paced living? Why do I have trouble slowing down? Why does that feel uncomfortable? And this eclipse might have a situation come up where everybody cancels plans on you, which is the Uranus surprise element, and you feel maybe more alone. And then you have to sit and be in this energy of quiet and solitude. And that gives you the catalyst of reflecting on why that situation is something you try to avoid. What is uncomfortable about that? And how can you confront that in this courageous way and actually create maybe more of a slow living or more quiet and solitude on purpose? And so you can just see how the eclipses set up the problem. They really point out the things that we need to work on. And then this new moon is the digging deep underneath the how do we do that? Why was this a problem to begin with? And maybe bring out, again, some kind of catalyst circumstance that then gets us out of this mode. So we're not just reflecting, but we're also acting. And Mars opposite Uranus has a very strong impulse towards action. But I mentioned impulse because it can also be very impulsive. So there's just a lot of energy at this new moon, and it's really hard to kind of point in one specific direction because I think for many of us it will manifest really differently. But with Mars opposite Uranus, again, it can really inspire us to act quickly, act now. And it can be this kind of breakthrough energy where we're finally seeing something clearly, or we're finally having freedom after a hard time, or finally getting out of some cycle where we felt like maybe we were just struggling against the same thing over and over again. But Mars can also be a little bit rash, and especially with Uranus stimulating it, there's an anxiety that can come here where we quite literally might have trouble sleeping. We might get into more fights. More people might get into car accidents or other types of accidents because of how quickly they're moving through things. So we have to be aware of jumping too fast. So the energy is ripe for a breakthrough, but the energy is also ripe for impulsive action that can lead to a difficult circumstance. So we have to be aware of how we're utilizing the energy that is available to us at this time. Because with this new moon having Mars next to it, a lot of this involves our own personal willpower, our own decision-making process, and that is really going to determine the type of outcome that you have, as well as maybe some of the ways that you react to these surprising circumstances, or the catalysts that happen. And I will say that we want to be mindful of confrontation. With Mars on this new moon, we might be a little bit more assertive, a little bit more aggressive. And so we need to be aware that we are not saying things that we don't mean, or hurting relationships in ways that we're going to regret later, but really stick with this kind of self-awareness that Scorpio can bring, where we have intentionality and we know what we're wanting to say. We're knowing what we want to get out of a situation. And we use our willpower and our focus and our determination to achieve that result, rather than throwing and flinging this energy everywhere in an unconscious way, which again is also very possible. And you might experience that from other people. Luckily, though, this new moon is also trining Neptune. So I think that's going to bring in a lot of this element of healing and gentleness and forgiveness that Mars and Scorpio typically doesn't have. If you know Taylor Swift, for example, she has Mars and Scorpio right on her ascendant. And I don't think that she's somebody that, based off of her music and her interviews and stuff, she's very self-aware and she's very aware of society in general. But I feel like she's also not somebody who easily lets things go. You know, she's making songs about people in her past from many years ago. So there's this quality of like not always being able to be lighthearted about things and let it roll off your back. Like things are taken very seriously when you have strong Scorpio energy like this new moon. But this Neptune trine is going to lighten that a little bit. It's going to give us more compassion, more spiritual understanding. I think it's going to be a lot gentler of an energy because of this. And so without this, I think it would be very aggressive and volatile, but I'm hoping that this Neptune energy can come in and bring a little bit more of like a smooth transition. You might also notice that your dreams in particular are very informative for you, because Neptune is the ruler of dreams. So some of these deeper subconscious issues could be dug up from the surface using your dreams, or using things that come through images or songs or in your artwork or meditations, these kind of altered states of consciousness where you're in a state of flow and nothing is contrived. It's all arriving and received by your brain, essentially, not made up. And so I think you should be very aware of those aspects of your life right now, because you could get some downloads through that. The last element of this T-square is the fact that the new moon and Mars, opposite Uranus, are both squaring Black Moon Lilith in Leo. So Black Moon Lilith has a lot to deal with things that are shadowy in relationships, especially. It doesn't have to be relationships, but typically I see Black Moon Lilith come up very strongly in our relationships with others. And if you haven't seen my types of relationships in astrology, I have 2 videos. One is like a more positive one, and the other one is more like karmic relationships. Watch that one to see how Black Moon Lilith plays out in our partnerships or our dynamics with others in any kind of sense. So Black Moon Lilith has a lot to deal with comparison, jealousy, envy, triangulated relationships, dark desires that we're afraid to admit. It can have to deal with our kind of wild sexual side. It could have to deal with cheating. I don't know if I already mentioned that. So there's kind of a lot of significations with Black Moon Lilith, and I've seen this come up with clients in so many different ways. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly like how it's going to be for someone until you talk to them. But this square with Black Moon Lilith is basically, to me, saying that the things that have been driving us on a subconscious level, in our relationships, especially with others, that are shadowy, might come to the surface at this new moon. So, and Black Moon Lilith also has a very, very strong need for freedom and for boundaries. So, she doesn't let people take advantage of her. And Mars and Uranus also very, very strong freedom planets. So this T-square really, to me, indicates that many of us are going to have a strong impulse towards freedom, or at least towards breaking out of a cycle that we could feel trapped in. But this could also be relationally. If we have felt kind of stuck or blocked by somebody or something in our lives, we're going to want to get out of that. We're going to feel very like an itch of like, I can't stand to be in the situation any longer. And so Black Moon Lilith can bring up where we might rebel, where we might revolt, especially because it's squaring Uranus, which is also a rebellious planet, where we might feel like we are, we're drawing like shadows of ourselves to the surface and realizing the whole picture of who we are and what it is that we really want. And I was pulling a card about this, and I pulled the Fox card, which I think is interesting because in this deck, the Fox card is about having a stable mate, having a partner, a life partner. But when you think of a fox, you think of them as sly, as cunning, as mischievous. You can't trust them. And that's kind of this Black Moon Lilith energy. We all have it. We all have parts of ourselves that are a little bit more shadowy. We can reject them. They don't have to be something that we own, but it's there regardless. All of us have it there. And so this Black Moon Lilith can draw those things out to the surface, where we're realizing things that we're operating maybe in our relationships with people or in certain dynamics of our life circumstances that were based off of these kind of shadowy desires of ourself, where we're kind of owning and seeing, I actually, I do have this like craving to be, I don't know. I don't want to give too many examples because I don't want to like pigeonhole this, but there's shadowy desires of ourselves that I think are coming to light, especially and about how this impacts our relationships and our relationship with freedom and autonomy ourselves. And so many of us, I think, are needing to embody the confidence and owning our gifts and feeling proud of who we are and doing things differently and not caring what other people think or say, that is one aspect of Black Moon Lilith that is positive, where we're kind of able to embody more of that. Other people, they might find that they have, again, things that come up that are illuminated, that are truths that they were not willing to admit to themselves, that are uncomfortable truths of, maybe I help you because actually selfishly I want to feel needed. And that's part of the maybe Black Moon Lilith in that case. I mean, maybe not necessarily, but that's just an example of like a shadow that could come up in a relationship that you integrate, you realize, and you liberate. And once you see that that's there, you have the full equation. You don't have to hide. You don't have to resist, essentially. You are able to see the full equation and work with that in a healthy and positive way, rather than kind of running from how you actually are feeling and not addressing it and then being driven unconsciously by it. So I think that this new moon has a lot to deal with our own desires. And that's because, again, the square with Black Moon Lilith, and because Mars is on this new moon, what do you really, really desire? Including the positive things that you easily own and the negative things that you have a harder time accepting, or society might have a harder time accepting. So what is it that you really desire? And then there is also another message that came in here. And this might be because at the time of this new moon, Mercury is making a square to Saturn. It is separated by 4 degrees, but so we might feel a little bit actually before the new moon takes place. But essentially, there's some kind of message I was receiving around respecting reality and the limits of reality. And part of that is respecting how long things take, how hard things are, or just the current circumstances. Like, there's only so much that somebody is capable of in a given lifetime. Like, maybe you're never going to fully resolve a trauma. Maybe you won't be a billionaire by the time you die. Like, there's so many things that we can see and respect in terms of realistic situations and limitations of life, and be okay with those things, approve of those limitations, work with them, and not deny that they exist. So there is something here around like practicality and productivity and limitations and reality, and us becoming very aware of those things in our lives and respecting them and working with them and around them, rather than trying to have too high of standards, or set ourselves up for failure by expecting us to be able to heal all these things overnight, or have a perfect relationship, or never have fights, or, you know what I mean? It's like, we need to see the reality of the situation and honor that. And I think that this is going to be helped by Mercury sextiling Venus, which creates more ease in our conversations, more mutual understanding, especially with Venus being in Libra, where we really need to see other people's points of view. And I think when we have all those things kind of combined, we're able to make progress in a realistic way, maybe in a slow and steady way. And we don't have to, fight against we don't have to resist and fight against what is currently present in our lives. Like, I think in some ways, because Uranus is involved, we will make rapid progress. But in other ways, I think it will take time. And so it's respecting the pace of life and the work that we have to do to get there. So let me see. Is that all I wanted to say? Yeah, boundaries, drawing shadows to the surface. Okay, I think the last thing I'll say is I think that there could be secrets that come out. This is a Scorpio new moon. It's squaring Black Moon Lilith. These are very secretive, typically hidden energies. So people might say things that you didn't expect them to say. Things might come to the surface that are truths that are finally being exposed, but they were always there, and they were driving things in the relationship. So be aware of that and be willing to listen, I guess, in a non-judgmental way to some of those things, as well as I think the qualities of truthfulness and loyalty, which are very Scorpio qualities, are going to be highlighted at this time. So if you are loyal and if you are truthful, you will kind of win this new moon, And with the square with Black Moon Lilith, those who have not been truthful, those who've been cheating on their partners, those who've been lying, those who've been deceitful, doing things for their own aim, that square to Black Moon Lilith could mean that that is actually coming out to the people that they've affected. So things could come to the light that could be hard to integrate, but are ultimately liberating for the person that it's happening to, the victim in that situation, and some kind of karma for those who were the ones instigating that. So that is what I'm seeing for the Scorpio new moon. Very complex, seems even more complex than some of these eclipses have been. So I'm curious what you guys think about this. I really feel like we're deep diving into our emotional nature, and then we're coming out with a lot more focus and dedication and leadership around where to direct our energy and where to move forward in our life confidently. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think that this is going to be possibly uncomfortable, but also extremely helpful. And I think it's the necessary medicine in the cycle of what's been going on lately. And I want to go ahead and dive into all of the rising signs, and make sure to watch also for your sun sign. Sometimes if you want to, you can watch your moon sign as well. I will have all of the links down below, and I hope that you guys have a beautiful day.